Well, thank you, Danny, but I'm afraid I have some bad news for you.
Okay.
Sorry, I know it's early, but
Early
I
bad
have
news?
to break it to you.
It's only 10. I mean...
Sorry.
Yeah.
The bad news is that your job is done.
Okay.
And that I'm replacing you with AI, so you can go. Thank you, it was lovely meeting you.
I'm sorry about that.
I'm not.
Thank you.
I hope he didn't take it personally, because that was just a hook for me to introduce the first presentation for today, which is boldly titled The End of the Recruiter Era. So, will bots replace us? Can they hire better than us? That's what we're going to find out from the next presentation. And our first speaker comes from the US and has over 40 years of experience in the industry. That's quite a lot and impressive. And I think that he's the right person to talk to us about transformation, because he has witnessed some very important transformations of the industry today. So I would like to welcome our first speaker today, Kevin Wheeler. So please, applause. The floor is yours, Kevin.
I think I have one built in. Well, thank you for inviting me, and good morning. I've got a scary and powerful message for all of us in recruiting today. I think that we're at the cusp of massive disruption and change in what we do and how we do it. I think we all kind of feel that already. We just don't really maybe articulate it well. So I'm going to really try to put this into words that bots are going to hire better than we do. There's no doubt about that for 90% of all the jobs. There'll be some jobs that the bots may not be able to do, but for the vast majority of the work that we do, the technology will do it for us, not unlike many other professions that have already been completely transformed by technology of one form or another, okay? So I think it's in the process of revolutionizing every job, not just recruiting. I don't think there's any job out there today that is immune from some of the impacts of AI. Some completely replaced and some heavily augmented, if you want to call it that, by AI. But it's redesigning work itself. And I think this is what's so interesting. You know, we have a traditional mindset about work, that there are jobs, that we hire individual people to do those jobs, that they have a set of skills that they apply to do those jobs. I think that's completely changing. I think that's not going to be the case anymore. And therefore, everything we do in recruiting is basically irrelevant. All right? And if we look at this, we hear people say that AI won't take your job. Someone using AI will take your job. But that's not true either. You know, I think that's completely false. That just knowing AI is not going to help you. It's not a bad thing to know AI and to have skills in AI, but that's not going to save your job or even give you a future job. It really is going to change everything about recruiting. Just think about, we talk about skill-based hiring. We talk about predictive hiring. What if the computer could anticipate all those things before any hiring manager even knows that they need these skills? If it can look at the entire strategy of a company, analyze what's going on through the data that it sees, the strategic plan, the focus of the organization. And the computer can recommend that we're going to need these particular kinds of skills, we're going to need these kinds of things, can predict what we're going to need, how many of them we're going to need, how we're going to need it. Then AI can go out there and find these people and pre-find them before there's any articulated need for them, can assess them, can have a whole pool of these people that are in its list of people to tap into or to attract to the organization. It can negotiate the offer, and it can propose a compensation scheme. And it won't necessarily be, and probably will not be, a permanent hire. More and more, it's going to be the gig workforce, the gig economy, the people, the consultant, the contractor who comes in to do a particular piece of work, not just somebody that's going to be there for an undetermined long amount of time with a fixed set of skills for the most part. And that includes us in recruiting. It may need a certain kind of recruitment skill, but not going to need a recruiter all the time, full time, every day. So recruiting isn't evolving, it's really disappearing as we know it today. okay? And I'm going to talk at the end of this about what I think it will look like as we move forward. It's not the end of it, but it's a huge shift in what we're doing. You have to have a strategy and think about a strategy that moves way beyond learn the latest tools or adopt the newest technology. I mean, these are just really temporary things. The technology is evolving as fast as everything else is. It's changing every hour of the day. We all know how AI is not moving in a linear line, it's moving in leaps and bounds. So we don't really know where it's going to go tomorrow, nobody does. You have to be able and ready to adapt to wherever it goes. So you can't tie your career to a particular tool or a particular type of technology or even a particular large language model because these things continuously evolve. So you have to be constantly learning, aware, and looking at where things are going and preparing for where those things are going. And this is really the biggest challenge we have as people because we all are comfortable in where we are and what we know and what we do and what we've done. And it's very hard to imagine a completely different life than we currently have or a completely different way of working than we have. And this is not going to necessarily affect everybody at the same time, at the same pace. But eventually, all of us will be impacted by this pretty significantly, some far more than others, depending on your particular role, what kind of company you work for, and who you're hiring. And I will talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But they're going to anticipate demand. They're going to understand what your organization needs before your organization even knows it needs it. It's going to know what the hiring managers want before they know what they want. It's going to be able to map the skills needed directly to the work. It's going to be able to broker and negotiate for people moving into different jobs within the organization. This can all be done with the technology today. None of this is new for us in the technology world. It's there. It's really a matter of implementing it, putting it to work, and getting it to work in the way we want it to work, okay? But I think the traditional funnel of I need somebody to work for me. You go open a requisition, you write the requisition, then you call a recruiter, or maybe you do it with a recruiter, and then you post it on some kind of job board or go out and search for these people and interview them and so forth and so on. That model is completely dead, all right? I don't think we'll do any of that in the future. I think the CV will be gone. We've been talking about this for as long as I've been in recruiting, but I think it is actually going to go away now because I don't need the CV anymore. If you have a digital presence, I can build the CV in real time about you as I go out there. I don't really need to have you apply for the job. I can go and find you and ask you to apply for this job or to take this job or be considered this job. So it really reverses the entire process from me looking for a job and you looking for me into the computer saying, I think this person or these people over here are the better ones for this particular job, and reaching out to them to see if they're willing to take on these responsibilities or do this job. This is why the gig workforce is going to become so critical for the future. And I think the permanent workforce is going to decline significantly. I think there'll be fewer permanent workers, smaller companies with more contracted workers, more part-time workers, and more people on demand, when their skills on demand when they need them. I think that's the future model of work. The number of permanent full-time employees, I think, will significantly decrease. And this is going to happen faster than we think. So, I mean, we all think that, yeah, I've seen this going on for a few years now in some jobs, but it's accelerating at an incredible pace. And I'll give you some examples in a few minutes here of what's going on, okay? The World Economic Forum predicts that recruiting is not adding AI, much as shredding recruiting and adopting entirely new specializations. And I'm going to talk about what those are probably going to look like. We're going to pivot to a whole different way of approaching it. And at IBM is a really good example. And IBM just recently replaced most of its HR team with bots, okay? They don't really have any internal HR anymore, okay? And employees are very happy with it. They're doing it fine. They can analyze data, conduct research, do all these things. They do all the communications. They generate the employee communications part. And Krishna, the CEO of IBM, he's a very, very smart man. He's stated that replacing HR staff with AI is actually not leading to job losses. but to repositioning those people in HR into new jobs and new positions within the company. And IBM is very well known for retraining and repurposing people in the organization. And IBM is one of the rare companies that survived 100 years and still is at the top of its game, okay? Only a handful of other companies have ever done that. And they've completely transformed from making, typewriters and business equipment to computers, and now moving into quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and a whole nother world. So to morph into these things require completely different skills, new ways of thinking about everything, and so they're kind of a leader, I think, in what's going on out there. You look at companies like General Electric and other companies that have virtually disappeared, even though they were huge even 10 years ago, because they were not able to morph and adapt and weren't able to anticipate and move into these new worlds that are emerging. So one of the most important skills that I think we as recruiters have and your companies have is to stay moving forward, stay current, learn constantly. Never, ever feel like I've got it. I've got the skill I need, because that's not going to do you any good whatsoever, because things are just moving way too quickly for that. So you've got to have a new skill all the time, continuously, okay? So they're moving people at IBM into revenue-generating jobs. And this is one of the real key messages, I think, here. We do not generate any revenue. We're a cost center for every organization. We cost money. Whether you're in HR, whether you're in finance, whether you're in any of the support services in the organization, you're not generating money. And so if there's some way that the organization can figure out how to generate money without you, they will. That's just the bottom line, okay? So if a robot is cheaper than you are and can do 80%, the rule is 80%. So if a robot can do 80% as much as you can, as well as you can, they will probably adopt the robot. Doesn't have to be perfect, but if they can do 80% of it, it's better to have the robot do it than humans. So this is just like water running downhill. All organizations go to the lowest cost model that they can find. And if you cost more than some other alternative method, you're gone. Okay? That's just the bottom line. So you've got to figure out how do you work more in the revenue generating side of things than in the cost side of things, okay? So if we look at recruitment automation today, it's just absolutely astounding where it's come from. Just in the last 5 years, it's completely transformed. Any vendor here, does any vendor here not use AI? Yeah. And I bet if I asked you that 2 years ago, many hands would have gone up. But suddenly, everybody's using AI. Whether it's really AI or not, they're saying they're using AI, okay? So, it's just become a necessity to stay relevant in the business world. If you're not involved in AI, if you're not using AI, if you're not involved in AI in some manner or way, you're irrelevant. But if you look at these things here, look at all these things that AI can do today. And this is just a tip of the iceberg. I mean, I look at things like branding, because, the computer, AI can't brand. I mean, they can generate better messages. They can use the data from consumers and people out there to focus the messaging more precisely and more accurately. They can change that message hourly if they need to, based on what's going on in the marketplace. The best we can do is, change our career site once every 6 months maybe, and most people don't even do that. So our marketing messages, our branding is probably obsolete, old-fashioned, not attracting the right people. That's just inevitable. I've never consulted for any company that I thought had an accurate, relevant marketing message for recruiting. It's always too generic, too broad, and not really current, not really up to date. If we look at things like sourcing, okay, we say we'll always need people to find candidates. Well, I don't think that's true. I think the computer can find almost anybody that has a digital presence. Now, sure, if you do not have any presence on the internet, which is getting rarer and rarer, but if you don't, then yes, the computer can't find it. But can you find those people either? Because how do you find them? You find them by searching online, right? So, I mean, finding people without using technology is almost impossible for us, unless you go to a conference or hang out in bars or something. But it's very inefficient, and very time consuming to do that. So sourcing, yeah, it'll be around for a while. We'll continue to use sourcers, will still exist, but there's going to be fewer and fewer of them, and they're going to be using more and more technology to the point where the company is going to say, why do we need the people at all? We just use the technology. Okay? In screening and assessment, far and away better to use AI. Now, the big argument is AI is very biased and it's prejudiced and so forth, which may be true today if you're using the current data in your organization to train the AI. But there was a recent experiment that was just done where they told the LLM, do not use anything that would be prejudicial in your analysis, in your screening of candidates. And suddenly the amount of prejudice went down to almost zero. It's a really interesting experiment. That by telling ChatGPT, don't use any gender information, don't use use anything that might be biasing your decision, suddenly the biasing went very, very low. What I said is I can never get any of us to be completely unbiased. It's impossible. It's just built into who we are and what we are, okay? I can train AI to be completely neutral, okay? I mean, I can do that. So, engagement, conversation, discussion. We've got data, lots of data right now that shows that people really enjoy talking to bots and that they're very pleased with it. The only time the bot fails is when there's a real problem or a real issue that needs to be solved. And so you need a couple of people, but you're not going to need the numbers of people we have today doing the engagement. And we could go through all of these things, but this technology can do every single step here, maybe not at 100% level today, but at that 80% level, which is what I just said a few minutes ago, is all we need in order to use that technology. And then if you do need humans to fill in the background, that's a very small number of people, very small number left with a different set of skills, okay? So it's time to challenge all of our assumptions about recruiting, everything we think about recruiting. What do we think are the truths? What attitudes do we have? How do we think and feel about what we do? Our customs, the way we do things. We need to relook at every single thing that we do. So let's look at a couple of assumptions that we typically make in recruiting. We say human judgment is critical, absolutely critical. That's the biggest argument I hear from people about AI. And that's the whole EU AI Act is built around human judgment is required by law, okay? And these laws, by the way, are impediments to the implementation of AI. And I think they probably will get modified and changed over time as we go along. They're typical reactions to anything new and scary, okay? So when we have something that threatens job security, we have something that threatens our current way of life, we pass a law against it. We did it with the automobile. We used to have limits. America had speed limits. No automobile could exceed 4 miles per hour, okay? That was a law, all right? It didn't last very long, all right? So these things that we put in place I understand why they're there, but I don't believe they can survive for very long because the technology and the thrust of the future is just too strong against it, okay? We use in culture fit, mass bias. We talk about culture fit. We always say, I have to hire people that fit our culture. What does that actually mean? To me, that means somebody that looks like me, thinks like me, talks like me. That's bias. That's prejudice, all right? So I don't want to hire you. You don't fit our culture, right? Because you don't play golf or whatever it is that I like to do. So this is a common reason people get rejected. The most common reason, when they have all the skills and all the qualifications, you don't fit our culture. Okay? It's just pure bias, okay? All the machine learning models outperform humans consistently in objective, rational assessment and analysis of people's capabilities, skills, and even predicting their potential on the job. And we often reject that because of culture fit, because we don't happen to like what the computer came up with, because it doesn't fit our assumption, our model of how people should think. So we really have to really question ourselves. Is the way we're making decisions about candidates, is the way that we're deciding who to hire and not hire, is this got any basis in objective reality? Is this going to be tied back to performance? Now, right now, we don't have any good way for us to really prove that by hiring this person, that performance is going to be better than if I hired that person, all right? With the computers and with AI, we will actually be able to quantify that, and we'll be able to have specific data that shows that this person is going to perform better than this person. We can run simulations of how they're going to work on the job. These are already, I've already seen programs that do this. They'll simulate how this person will work on the job versus that person and look at the output and the outcome of that person and who's going to be more productive or more, or do a better job in the job than that person. So, we've got all kinds of tools today. We've got tools that predict whether you're lying or not. We've got tools that predict whether the candidate is, actually who he is, okay, or who she is, okay? So all of this stuff exists in technology, and it will be implemented and used. So this whole thing that human judgment is critical, I'm not so sure that that's a valid point, okay? I'm not sure what that really means. Human judgment, what does that mean? My prejudice, okay, all right? Network always matters, got to have a network. The more networks you have, the better off as a recruiter you'll be, okay? AI builds richer, faster, better networks than you will ever build, okay? The computer, you tell a ChatGPT or any of the LLMs, custom LLMs, I want to build a network of this type of skill or this type of person, you'll have it in no time at all. It will be global, it'll be accurate, it'll be a great network, okay? Algorithms are going to, like I just said a minute ago, are going to predict who will be better in engaging, who will be better if you want to hire them for your company, who's going to communicate better within your company. You can personalize all the AI messaging, and that's getting better and better every day. It can personalize it more than you can because the AI knows more about that person than you'll ever know, okay? It can accumulate all the data from their Facebook page, their social media, their Instagram, whatever it is. It can know everything about that person and give a really specific message directed directly to that person to attract them that we could never do. We just couldn't do the volume, we don't have the breadth, the scope, and we don't have the data. And to get that as an individual would be almost impossible except for a handful of rare cases, okay? So human-driven networking is just redundant. You don't need it. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not a good thing to do. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but it's not going to be a productive way to find the people you need in the organization skill. It's an old-fashioned way that we had no other way to do it before, okay? So another assumption is recruiting is all about relationships. It's all who you know, and you're going to hear this over and over. The thing that AI can't do is build relationships. Well, that's not true, okay? That's not true at all, okay? Chatbots can manage the whole end-to-end recruitment journey, no question about it. You're going to see, you can see tools right here today that do that process down in the exhibition center. You can use behavioral analytics to look at people's motivation and how likely they are to leave the organization. What's the probability they're going to leave? This is all objective data that the computer can get that many times we don't like it. We don't like to hear it, we don't want to hear it, but it's generally more accurate than anything else. It can optimize negotiations. Nothing is probably better than a fully informed AI bot to negotiate a deal. If it knows everything about your past, your history, your likes, your dislikes, everything about you, it's going to be able to negotiate with you far better than any human unless that human really intimately knows who you are, okay? So when you talk about the great deal makers of the world, they're great deal makers because they have more knowledge about what that person wants or doesn't want than anybody else. Well, if AI has that knowledge, then they're going to be the world's greatest deal makers. And I think there's no doubt they're going to be able to do that. They're going to be able to target the salary levels, the perks for the job, precisely because it knows so much about the people out there. Is that a good or bad thing? I don't know, but that's the reality of what's happening, okay? A human in the loop is necessary. Human emotional intelligence can be simulated. There are simulations now where the computer can really not tell if they're talking to a person or not. They did this whole test where they asked like 100 people whether they were talking to a bot or a human. They couldn't tell, all right? The voice is getting better. The ability to mimic how we talk and act is getting better. Have any of you seen the human robot, the humanoid robots? These are the robots that look like people. They walk like we do. They talk like we do. If you haven't seen them, just Google humanoid robots and watch some videos. It's just absolutely scary, okay? You will, in 5 more years, I think probably maybe even less than 5 years, you will generally not be able to tell if it's a human or not as long as they're not walking. As soon as they walk, robots have a way to go because they still walk like robots, okay? But in terms of just seeing them sitting in a chair or talking to you, you cannot tell. And the UK is one of the, company in the UK is a kind of a leader in this. And they're the modeling they do, the hairstyles, the facial makeup, it's absolutely amazing. The expressions on their face, their smiles. So is it really going to matter whether you're talking to a human or a robot if they can do the job? Right? So if the robot can do the job, do you care if they're human or robotic? I mean, so these are really tough things we're going to have to learn to deal with. So is that human element so critical? How critical is that human element? Okay. So these are really almost philosophical questions that I can't answer, but I can say this: we're going to be faced with those questions, and we're going to have to figure out how we or our organization is going to deal with those things, because these are the realities of what's coming. Okay. And you can make some simple parallels to, back when Amazon and the other online shopping networks were very new, the biggest argument is that nobody is going to want to buy clothes, especially women, are not going to want to buy clothes without touching, feeling, and maybe trying them on in the store. How many of you bought clothes online? Anybody here? Okay, I close my argument, all right? So, I mean, this is just the reality. Even though we say we won't, we do, okay? If it works, if it's good. And it will be to that point, okay? So the emerging recruiting function is, I believe, going to use AI-powered talent acquisition tools in incredible amount of depth and scope, okay? It's going to offer augmented and virtual reality for interviews. I think we've struggled a lot with the virtual reality tools. They're getting better and better. They will continue to evolve. Meta has some incredible ones. Anyone seen the new Meta glasses that you can buy? The new, remember Google? Some of you may remember Google glasses. That was a big deal maybe, how long ago was that? 5 years ago. And they disappeared because they were massive things you had to wear and they didn't work. Google came out with glasses that looked just like normal glasses, but actually project images out here in front of you that only you can see. I could walk up to you and it would tell me who you are and what you do. And I could say, oh, hi, how are you? And, hi, you know me? Yeah. No, I don't, but my glasses do. You can buy these today for $100, okay, from Facebook. Okay? So, and they're getting better and better every day. So just think about 5 years from now. You think about that, okay? Blockchain, anybody here familiar with blockchain? Not very many people. Okay, blockchain is a technology. It's been around for a long time for cryptocurrency. If anybody trades in crypto, anybody use crypto here? Okay. But basically it provides an incredibly secure way to store information, all right? And there are several companies that are actually encoding college credentials and other information about people in the blockchain, which will give the computer or anyone if the candidate gives you access to it, can use that data to help verify whether you have the right background for a particular job or whatever. So the blockchain is going to become, you'll hear more about that in the next few years. It's struggled to get off the ground for a lot of reasons that I'm not going to go into now, but I think it's going to come. It's already coming to fruition now, and you're going to see more and more companies using it. Most of the major universities, Harvard, and these are now putting graduates' credentials into the blockchain so that you can verify someone's college degree or education through the blockchain. So you're going to see more and more of this coming, okay? You're going to use more predictive analytics. Are going to become just normal part of doing business. And of course, onboarding will be completely automated. There are already tools that do this pretty much already now. So there's just so many tools that are going to emerge and are already out there that are going to continue to evolve and replace a lot of the things that humans do in the recruitment function, okay? So where can you add real value? So is it doom and gloom for us? Are we done, And traditional recruiting, it's done. I think it's done, okay? It's going to, fade away. It may not die in a sudden boom, but it's going to fade away and become less and less used. When I look at what's gone on in the US in the last 3 years, we've probably we've lost maybe 50, 60,000 recruiters have been laid off. And they're all looking for other jobs outside of recruiting because there are no more recruiting jobs for them. Why? Because more work is being automated itself, so we don't need to hire people to do this work because the computer is doing it for us. Robots are doing it, or whatever is taking over and doing it. Call centers, all these high volume jobs that recruiters used to be working for, they're more and more being automated, and there's no more need for thousands of people to be hired to do these jobs, okay? Second thing is just the nature of work is changing itself. So how work gets done is changing. It's more simplified, it's more streamlined. You look at most organizations talking to gurus in management and organization structures, say that for every job with 5 people, only 1 is productive, okay? The other 4 may do some stuff around the periphery, but there's 1 out of 5 jobs, only 1 is really the most productive and is really contributing to the organization. The other 5 are just kind of there because we think we need them, or they're backup, or it's just tradition, or whatever it is, okay? We've always had 5 engineers, you know? Maybe we all know there's only 1 engineer that ever did anything, but we always have 5 engineers, okay? So the predictive analytics is actually giving information to companies about who is productive. Where is the work getting done? And so we need fewer people. So organizations used to have 1,000 or now have 500. So the bottom line is that combined with the technology for recruiting and the changing nature of work and the technology in work, the total demand for recruiters is just shrinking and will continue to shrink. So like I said, it's going to be a slower death, but it's going to come over time, okay? So we have to ask ourselves, what do we do that really adds value? What makes us significant, useful, and important, okay? What kind of work can we do? And what can we do that computers can't do or won't be able to do? So those are tough questions, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute here. So McKinsey says machines can handle up to 30% of today's work hours by 2030. That's all work hours of all, even CEOs. In fact, there was just a survey in the US of CEOs asking the CEOs if they thought the computer could do their job. And I forgot the percentage, but a very high percentage of them said, I think the computer could do my job. It can do a better strategy. It can do a better predictive forecast for sales. It can do most of my job for me better than I can do it. So if a CEO says that, imagine other jobs, okay? So firms are really starting to look at how do I redesign the whole way we do our work? Can we make the way we do whatever it is we do more simple, more streamlined, more efficient? And they're using AI to help them figure out how to do that. And that's going to continue to grow, and that means I'm going to need, for sure, it's going to mean I need fewer people to do these roles than I had before, okay? So what do humans have that people say? Political savvy right now. We have the political savvy within the organization to influence and to help organizations make decisions, okay? We can read between the lines of, you know, who is really pulling the levers in this company, who is really the boss, who is really important, and who's not important. Computers can't do this yet, okay? So these are at least jobs that for the next few years will be okay to have, okay? So being able to understand the politics of your organization and be able to negotiate and navigate around that will be critical, okay? Telling stories, communicating effectively. I mean, we've known this for a long time. Computers can communicate, but they communicate like computers, okay? And we have to have that storytelling ability to engage people and get them excited and interested in what's going on. We can still do that better than computers can, okay? And ethical judgment, complex ethical decision making. Is this something we really ought to do or not do or shouldn't do based on our values and the way we think things should be done, okay? Computers struggle big time with ethics, okay, big time. So these are the areas where we still have an edge, okay, all right? Understanding the culture of an organization, really figuring out, knowing, that kind of goes along with the first one I said about political influence, kind of go together with the cultural savvy. Understanding the organization, how it works, who makes decisions, what's important, what isn't important to the organization, okay? Long horizon trust building. How do you make long-term relationships with your top talent? I know that I want to hire you 5 years from now, but I can't use you right now today. How do I stay engaged with you? How do I continue to build your trust in me? That's still a human activity. The computer can communicate with you and update you, but it's not going to build that human connection that will be important, okay? So that trust building piece is still there. But that's on individual cases and for certain specific jobs and people, okay? It's not across the board, okay? Cross-disciplinary creativity. Doing things that computers would think were illogical. Anyone ever watch Star Trek? And Mr. Spock would say, but that's completely illogical, okay? Because he was like a robot, and everything that he did had to be scientific and analytical. And that's what computers are. But we can do stuff that's off the chart, kind of weird, crazy stuff. Computers don't do weird, crazy stuff, okay? So that's when we can make a connection that a computer would never make. That I'm going to hire you to be a nurse, okay? They say, him, a nurse? You're kidding me, you're going to be kidding me. But it might turn it, yeah, he might be the best nurse ever made. Only a human could ever make those connections, okay? So that's a human skill, all right? Computers are not going to do that. Thank you. Yeah. Please don't be my nurse, okay? So the 6 key skills for the new recruiter. I think these are the 6 key skills. Requires you to continuously learn and adapt. And I really like this. I don't know if you know who Reid Hoffman is, but Reid Hoffman was the founder of LinkedIn. And he is a pretty forward-looking guy. And he said, we all have to act like we were software. We have to say, you're version 1 right now. What's going to be your version 1A or 1B? What's your version 2? What's your version 3? So if you think about yourself as a versioning kind of person, your development has to continuously adapt, just like software. Software has to continually be improved, adapted, changed. We have to be improved, adapted, and changed. So I'd like to ask you, what's your version 2? What's your next version going to look like? What's your version 3 going to look like? And I think that's really, really important for us to ask ourselves and to talk about that, okay? Your differentiator isn't what you know, not what you know. We've built, the whole 20th century was built on what you know. Knowledge, expertise, computers can do all that, okay? That's what computers are really good at. But what differentiates us from them is learning and the emotional side of things that computers don't have. That's where we differentiate ourselves, okay? So it's important to know how technology works. There's no question about that. To know how to manage and use the AI tools that you have. And those are going to be relevant jobs and skills to have for at least a few more years, okay? Understanding this, knowing how to set up this whole process. Those are going to be really critical, okay? Getting good at reading workforce data. This is going to be really important, okay? What's the data? Where's it coming from? How good is it? How clear is it? Making sense of the data the company already has. Helping the computer, maybe at this early stages, to get better understanding and using that data. And these are jobs that are probably only a few years in length. This is version 2, maybe. Then you've got to move on to version 3, because these will ultimately not be critical skills. And I think that's one of the things that you have to remember. The skills that we used to have were supposed to last you a lifetime. Now you go to college, you get a degree, and that's what you're going to do, okay? Well, that's no longer true. So you're going to have to continuously get a new set of skills as the old skills become obsolete or be taken over by the computers. So we're going to have to continuously move on. And right now, this set of skills will be good to have. In 5 years, this will probably not be relevant anymore, okay? Plan the workforce, don't just fill jobs. Being able to help the company understand what it's going to need in the future. Help it look forward. This is the talent intelligence piece. Should we buy talent? Should we hire people on a full-time basis? Should we build talent and train people to do these jobs? And how quickly can we do that? And can we do it fast enough to meet the demand? Can we borrow it from somewhere? Like, can we use contractors or gig workers, bring them in and do it for us? Or can we automate it and use a bot, all right? So these are the choices we're going to have to make as companies. And the recruiter's job, hopefully, will be help the company decide which of these to do. We only, pretty much, in my experience, hire people, full-time, permanent people. But what if your job was also to figure out who can we train to do this job? And asking a hiring manager, should we fill this job with a permanent person? Why couldn't a contractor do this job? Why couldn't a consultant do this job? Do you really need somebody to do this full-time for the next X number of years? Okay? So we should be asking these questions. This is going to help us survive if we do that. That's the political savvy we talked about a few minutes ago. That's the ability to influence, which again is a human skill. These are important things that we need to get good at doing, okay? Really understand how work flows in your organization. How does work get done in your company? Who are those people that really contribute to that job? And who are the people who are one of those four out of the five that don't really do anything, okay? Who are the real critical players that really contribute to the organization, okay? So the more you can do the things here, the longer your career will last, okay? All right? Know the rules, understand the various laws, the EU Act, all these things. Understand these laws, these rules. Make sure the technology is following these rules, is being properly programmed to follow these rules, that your organization is using this technology, okay? Understand the law, read the law, understand what's required. These are skills for right now today. They may not be skills for forever, but for right now, these are good skills to have, okay? Notice I didn't say anything about interviewing or sourcing or engaging or any of those things because those are not necessary anymore. You don't need to do those things anymore, okay? Run the company's gig marketplace, okay? Make it like a product, okay? Think more about it like a product. Think about work as a product. Work is a product. And how do you get that product to be more effective, more efficient, cheaper, better, okay? So it's changing the mindset, thinking differently, which is really, really hard. I know that's extremely hard to do, but it's absolutely what we have to do if we want to survive. And you want to have a career that runs another 20 years, you know. As I think hopefully you know now that the career you have today isn't going to be here in 20 years, okay? Not going to be here. Not going to be here in 5 years, okay? So, industry expertise. How much do you know about your industry? How deep is your knowledge of your industry? Its future, its past, its likelihood to survive into the future? I mean, if you were at Google, at Amazon, and you were working in a warehouse that had 5,000 people in it, if you were any savvy about what's going on in the world, you'd know that in a few more years, those 5,000 people are going to be robots, and they're not going to be there. And so, should we keep to hire these people? How do we start not hiring these people? How do we transition that workforce out? Helping companies make those kinds of decisions, think through those things, may be a very critical role for any of us in the human side of work, okay? Whether it's HR or recruiting, okay? I have this in the book I wrote a while ago. There's I talk a lot about this, the different stages of evolution that we might go through. And over here, I got some possible new talent roles or titles that you might have, like AI Ethics and Oversight Liaison Officer. These are roles that will emerge. These are roles that will be there. And like I said, they may not be there for 15 years, but they'll be there for 5 years or 8 years. They're going to be roles that really are critical to helping us survive as recruiters and move forward, okay? And I'm not going to go through every one of these right now, but you can get a copy of these slides and look at these later. So I think, so there's 5 imperatives that I want to leave you with today that I think are really important, okay? The first one is your mindset. You've got to change your mindset. Get out of thinking about your career or your job the way it has been, and start thinking about it the way it should be or will be in the future, or where you want it to. What's your version 2, okay? What are the new ideas and new things you can bring to the job that you have today? That's the first one. The second one is urgency. You have no time to waste. This isn't something you can think about for the next 2 years, because by then it'll be way too late, okay? You have to act today. How do you start doing things differently? I love this quote by Mario Andretti, who was a famous race car driver. And he said, if everything seems under control, you're not going fast enough. All right? So if you're not scared, if you're not worried, you're not getting it, okay? So you gotta get moving fast. Urgency is really critical, okay? Vision. You've gotta picture what your new version is. What is it gonna be? Who are you? What do you wanna be 3 years from today? What's your vision of yourself? And what's your vision for recruiting and recruiting function? Really critical to think about that. To actually take time to think about that. We talk about vision, but we never really think about it. We always just act on today. But if you just act for today, you're going to be left in the background, okay? Resilience. Not worrying about things are changing. I'm going to move you from this job to that job or from this function to that function. It's okay. You got to get up and say, okay, I'll go do that. I'll learn a new thing. I'll do something different. So if you don't have resilience, you're going to be in deep trouble because you're going to feel a lot of ups and downs in the next few years for the recruiting function. Lots of them. And you need to be resilient to survive it, okay? And you need to experiment and try new stuff. Don't be afraid of trying something different and new, approaching it a different way. Saying, I used to do it this way, now I'm going to not do it this way. I used to interview everybody. What if I stopped interviewing people and use the data I have from an assessment tool? You know, are you brave enough to do that? Okay? So these are the things you have to do, kind of experiment and try new approaches and new ways of doing things. The old playbook is dead, completely dead, okay? AI takeover, you know, skill-based hiring, you know, hybrid, freelance work, the gig economy, aging workforce, which I haven't really talked about that, but that's a huge factor, especially here in Asia and elsewhere in the world, okay? They're right here. We're facing these things right now, today, all of these things, okay? Winners will adapt, okay? Losers will hang on to the past and say, oh, it's not really going to happen. I don't believe anything Kevin said today. And it's all bullshit, and you know, it's just not right, okay? So which side are you on, okay? Which side are you on? Only you can answer that question, okay? Which side are you on? You might want to pick up a copy of the book I wrote last year. It talks a lot about these topics in there. And I have a free weekly newsletter that you can subscribe to if you'd like to. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.